A reading from Matthew chapter 15, verses 10 through 28. Listen now for the word of the Lord. Then he called the crowd to him and said to them, "Listen and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it is what comes out of the mouth that defiles." Then the disciples approached and said to him, "Do you know that the Pharisees took offense when they heard what you said?" He answered, "Every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be uprooted. Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind. And if one blind person guides another, both will fall into a pit." But Peter said to him, "Explain this parable to us." Then he said, "Are you also still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth enters the stomach and goes out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. For out of the heart come evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands, that does not defile." Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came, and she knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The church is really good at tradition. Religion is, at its core, a set of practices and rules lived by. The disciples lived by eating clean to honor God. And Jesus says, to heck with that tradition. It's empty and outdated. It serves no spiritual purpose. Now, we're all good Presbyterians here. Surely none of us has ever heard another of us say, "But we've always done it that way." Now, I poke fun, but in all seriousness, as reformed as we are, we're also sticklers for tradition. So we should understand fully the confusion and the shock that the disciples experienced when Jesus basically threw out a giant chunk of Leviticus into the garbage and wiped his hands of it. We can read the Bible, we can come to church, do devotionals, sit in Bible study, but none of that matters if we do not go out into the world and spread love. These practices are meant to help us examine our hearts. They themselves do not make us righteous. We must allow ourselves to be transformed by them. So he tells them, the Pharisees eat clean food, but they speak words that are not of God, and they defile what it is to be children of God. Words have the power to uphold hostility, exclusion, and plant distasteful things in the minds of the weak. Beware the elegant of speech, because in this world, brute force is only the after effect of the words of someone with a blackened heart. Now hold on. Wait a minute. Didn't Jesus use his words just now to insult a woman in our text? Yes, he did. And if you were not unsettled by that, then you need more coffee before church. This passage, it's ugly and it's shocking, and it is a wake-up call. Jesus is nearing his end. He ventures into Gentile territory, and he's about to prepare his disciples for the cross. He's looking for a little break, a little bit of TLC to gather his emotional strength. And then this woman bugs him. She is not one of his flock, so why should he care? So he insults her to get rid of her. He calls her a racial slur for the Canaanites, a dog. This woman has 3 strikes against her, and Jesus was abiding by the social norms of his time. She was a woman, a Canaanite, an enemy of the Jews, and her daughter was inflicted by a demon. Jesus should not be speaking to her. His mission is to the Jews, and she's nothing. He would only sully himself with someone like her. She's not worth his time. Well, that's awful, you might be thinking. But how many of us have done the same exact thing to a homeless person on the street? Well, Jesus did something against every social rule and known tradition, and he opened his heart to her. So 2 things happened here. By way of rejecting harmful social norms, Jesus tells us that it is what is in our hearts that matters, and that you must have an open heart to love rightly. Matters of the heart make us vulnerable, and we don't tend to like that feeling very much. Love isn't easy. Breaking social norms is not easy. But someone has to lead the way. So Jesus is asking us to put aside what we know and follow him with love. You want to know something amazing? This text that we just read today, that was in our lectionary. It's perfect. The gospel is an incredible thing. And like the woman in our story, we are totally unworthy of it, but in such desperate need. That's why we're all here in the church, right? We come to worship. We come to find answers. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. Our country has been going crazy, and it has been building up for years. If you are feeling unsettled, uneasy, and tired, that's good. You're awake, and you're paying attention. We come to church. We can count on church. Despite what happens out there, church is where we can always come together every week and meet. But don't get comfortable. I want you all to take a moment and look at the people around you. This is your family. And family is made up of Republicans, Democrats, centrist, black, white, Asian, young and old, straight and gay folks. We all come in here with the labels that we wear. But if you ask me, what I see right now is just a bunch of Christians. None of us is holding up a sign right now. None of us is shouting hatred in this room. We're all sitting here together, united in one love for God. And that's pretty amazing. I said not to get comfortable, though. Yes, it is amazing that we are all here together. But what about out there? Do we live our lives primarily as Christians out there? As members of this family from Monday through Saturday? If you want to know the answers to this crazy issue that we have in this country, where we seem to only become more and more divided, well, you have it. Go out into the world with an open heart, and do not speak ill of others because they're not just like you. Sit with them. Show love. Be open and inviting. Choose love. And set aside the old traditions of prejudice and things that divide us. Those things do not serve the kingdom. Love that seeks connection beyond our comfort. That is our calling. Now, I gave a similar sermon not long ago at another church, just after the election. The congregation, they were all up in arms. People who used to be friends had stopped speaking to one another. Republicans and Democrats sat in different pews. I'm not kidding. People stopped coming to church, and I heard ugly talk in the church halls. So I basically got up and told them to cut it out. They need to be like Christ, to reach across boundaries and love their neighbor. Well, after I gave this sermon, I'm shaking hands with people as they leave, and this little old lady comes and she grabs my arm. She looks me in the eye and she says, "Honey, you tell those Republicans." Now, several people in the line later, a young man grabs my hand and says, "The liberals needed to hear that. Good job." Friends, I'm infuriated. Are we so stuck on our pride that we cannot recognize the message of Jesus Christ above our own prejudice? Even in the church, he defeats his own prejudice in our story today. Our King, our Savior, our Messiah. He was sent for his people. Because of his open heart, you are all here today. That's right, Gentiles. We were once all the outcasts. As Christians, we are called to love radically beyond ourselves. What does that mean? Well, Jesus says this: "You have heard it said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Now, people hear that and they get angry. They think it's not going to work because love means copping out, standing aside, and whispering in the faces of those who shout. But love is not passive. Love is not for the weak of heart. To those who argue that we must fight hatred with hatred, I say this: fight hatred by standing up for love. For to have a love so powerful as to not need hatred in the world in order to express it is true might in the face of evil. Now, if all that just went over your head, let me simplify this. You can't put out fire with fire. You need water. Water is life, and life is love. So I want you all to take your fists and open them. Spread your arms out wide and open your hearts that you can be transformed. And when you are ready, you can open your mouth so that only love will come out. Is Jesus saying to love people of all skin colors? You bet he is. Is he saying to love people of all sexual orientations and genders? You bet. Is he saying to love the white supremacist waving those hideous Nazi flags? You bet he is. It's called radical love because it's so hard. It isn't the norm. Jesus said to love all. Now, as they say in Texas, y'all means all. All means all. Love isn't passive. It takes more passion and drive than the easy road of hatred. Now, I'm not saying to go out and accept the views or stand by and let your enemies hurt others. I'm telling you that as Christians, you have been told to intervene with love. I would like to draw our attention this morning to a certain man who leads by the example of radical love. Perhaps you have read his story. Daryl Davis is a keyboardist. He's a black man. He was once playing in a bar when a white man from the crowd that night caught him after the show and told him he had never heard a black man tickle the ivories so well. They sat down and they had a drink. And they had great conversation about the things that they had in common. Then the white man said that he was surprised he had such a good time with Daryl. Darrell asked him what he meant by that, and the white man said he was part of the Ku Klux Klan. He then gave Darrell his card, and he asked him to call him if he ever played again. The African-American community called Darrell crazy, but he called this white man up, and their relationship continued to grow. That white man introduced him to the head of the Klan, and Darrell took a risk and met that man in his home, even though he was warned not to go there. That Klan leader was Roger Kelly, who had become Imperial Wizard. Darrell, through relationship with Roger and several others like him, made a difference. For dozens of Klansmen turned in their hoods to Darrell upon knowing him. He asked the same question: how can they hate me if they do not know me? In religion, we have a word for this: reconciliation. It means to be in relationship. Darrell says this: I appeal to people's common sense. I don't seek to convert them, but if they spend time with me, they can't hate me. The Klansman sees what I want, and that is the same thing for my family as he does for his. If you can work on the things in common, that is how you build friendship. Friends, that is the harder road. If you want to change hearts, then you do so lovingly, with your arms open. If you come with your fists up, hoping to punch the hatred out of someone, well, it's only going to do the opposite. I told you that the passage today should unsettle you. Are you unsettled yet? Christianity is not for the faint of heart. As Christians, it does not matter how young or how old that you are. Everyone sitting in this room is called to get up and get to work. Don't you hear this world shouting and pleading to know love? For even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from their master's table. Christians, let your faith be so great that God's love may be known through you. Speak only with love, that your words do not defile, and that your love may transform the world. Amen.